Hello, Salad Writer here. Welcome to another Java tutorial. I forgot to tell you something slightly important. There's these things called packages, and packages are basically how you group your classes. So what happens is you can import classes. You can say like import java.lang.all. The star stands for all, and basically I imported a package. And these things are packaged, but right now this doesn't have a name, so why don't we give it a name? Just hold on for a second. Scratch that. Let's just create a new package so I can show you. I'm just going to name this R package. Or how about this? com.saladrater.first.tutorial or something. So I created a package, and I can move actually this class into that package. Yep, there we go. And now that's successfully into my package. Now, as you can see, it automatically generated some code called package com.saladrater.tutorial. That's just saying that this whole class, everything on this page, is going to be in this package. So it will be wrapped in this package, and if we want to call this class later in a different package or in a different project, and we import this code, we can say something like import com.saladrater.tutorial, you see? And it will import it. But right now we don't really have to do that because we're already in the package, so that's sort of unnecessary. Okay. Also, I want to go ahead and explain some of this code. And introduce one new thing. So one new thing is comments. So in programming, spaces and like extra spaces and extra enters, they don't matter at all. Like, they don't make any difference. Like, your program will not be faster if you put more spaces in your program, if you space it out. I mean, it may look neater, but basically it doesn't do anything. Basically, like, only stuff that does stuff is stuff you actually type and see. So the empty spaces don't do anything. And another thing that doesn't do anything in your code is comments. Comments are sort of like empty spaces. They just don't do anything. So the way you make a comment is just doing 2 forward slashes like this. When it turns green like that, that's when you know you made a comment. So there's 2 ways to make comments. You can do double slashes, or you can do a slash and then whatever this thing is, asterisk, whatever. And then you have to end it with another asterisk and then a slash. And anything in between that, you can make comments. The thing with the difference is, the thing with a double slash, you can only do it in one line. If I press enter and I start typing in, it's not going to work. So I'm mostly going to be using this types of comments because they're just easier to do. I'm sort of lazy. So I'll be making a lot of comments just to show you what things do. So yeah. Okay. So let's go over a function or a method. So this whole thing is a method. I talked about it earlier. So let's talk about each thing. So the public is saying what scope it's in. Can people see it, or can other classes call it? So instead of public, there's also private. Private means, you know, other classes can't call that method and stuff. I'll go more into depth in that subject later on in the tutorial. It's not super important at this point. And then static. Static's not too important at this point, so just trust me on that. A lot of methods don't even have static. But in this case, static is a good thing to do. And then, okay, the third word, void. Okay, this is actually sort of an important subject to understand. So the third word here, void, is telling Java what return type it is. So every method must return something, okay? Except for void. So void is basically telling Java that this method is not going to return anything. So yeah. And by returning, I mean you use a keyword called return, and then you put something here, and you have to return something like that. And what you can do with that is set a variable equal to something, and if it returns something, like if we change this to int, which integers mean a number, let's say it returns 5 or something, it will return a number. But we have to tell Java that it returns a number, and then we have to return it. If we don't return anything and we're telling Java it's going to return a number and it doesn't, it's going to cause an error, so don't do that. So right now, we're just going to make all our functions void, just to keep it simpler. I will go into more depth about functions and methods later, but it's sort of a hard subject to grasp right at the beginning, so let's start with something else. Let's start with variables. So in Java, there's variables. Like in math has variables, and you can store stuff in variables, and that's cool, right? Usually in math, we're trying to find out what the variable is, but usually in programming, we already know what the variable is, or we're just using variables to store certain information. We're not really trying to find what the variable is. So there's different types of variables. There's integers, which basically just means a number without a decimal point. There's doubles, which basically means a number with a decimal point. There's another one called float, which basically means a number with a decimal point, but it's a slightly different than a double. I'll go over that in a little bit. And there's string. String basically just means letters. So this is a string, basically. Your name can be a string. Your email can be a string. My name can be a string. So yeah, those are basically the basic types of variables. And you can make variables like this. First, you have to declare it. Declaring a variable just means you say what it is. I'm going to say this variable is going to be an integer. So I say int, and then I say the name. I have to type the name. You can call your variables anything. So I'm going to call my variable number or something. And then I have to put a semicolon. So every line in Java you write, you have to put a semicolon at the end of the line. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So just remember, at the end of every line, every statement, you have to put a semicolon, with the exception of classes and methods, because this is you tell Java where it ends, where it begins and ends. But for just lines like that, you have to tell it where the line ends by putting the semicolon. But yeah. Then next thing you have to do is assign it a value. So what is going to be in this number? Well, we could put numbers in this number, right? Or numbers in this integer. So why don't we put the number 5 in it? Okay, so now it's going to store the number 5. Awesome. We just created our first variable. And a really cool thing is you can do this. You can initialize the variable, and you can declare it and initialize it at the same time. You can say it's an int number and it's going to equal 5. You can do that right away in one line. That's awesome. So that's integers. But what does it do? What can we do with it? Well, we can do lots of things with it. Well, first of all, let's just print it out to the console. So I'm not lying to you. So now when we print out number, let's save this, run it as a Java application. It's going to print out the number 5. Awesome. It did what we expected. So that's basically what variables do. Let's do a couple more. Let's go over doubles. Now doubles can actually, let me show you ints with decimals. So let's try to put a decimal on a number. You see, it's not letting us do it. It's making those red squiggly lines, which means we have an error. And so yeah, Java won't let us do that. So if we want decimals, we have to make this a double. So I spelled that wrong. Okay, let's make that a double, and let's add a decimal point. Okay, no errors. Awesome. So let's print this out, or run this. Sorry. Now we have our 5.0. Let's change it. I'm just going to change the number to 5.3 right over there. Run it again. Let's see what we get. 5.3. Awesome. Okay. So as you can see, doubles, you have a little bit more freedom. Since you can have decimal points, but it doesn't necessarily mean you want to use doubles all the time, since they take up a little bit more memory. So just depends on what you're doing. Now let's I'm going to do floats. Now floats, they can take decimal points too, but why is it giving us an error? That's a little bit strange, right? Okay, so basically in Java, if you're going to have a float, you have to put F, the letter F, after the number. I know it's a little bit weird. It looks weird. Like, what the heck is an F doing after a number, that's strange, but basically you're telling Java that it's not a double, it's a float. So that just means it's a float. So that's why you have to do that. Otherwise, it thinks it's a double, and you can't have a double. We can't set a float equal to a double. So the difference between a float and a double is a float can have less, double can have more decimal points. So they can have lots and lots, oops, those are letters. They can have lots and lots of decimal points. Floats, they have a little bit of less decimal points. So why would you use floats? Well, the good thing about floats is they take up less memory and they still give you decimal points. So if you're not working with huge numbers or very super precise numbers, floats are just going to do just fine. I use floats a lot, especially for games, because you don't need that like super precision that maybe scientists need, but you also need decimals and you need to be pretty precise. So I use floats a lot. So I'm just going to go ahead and run this program. And there we go, 5.3, awesome. The last one I'm going to do is a string. Okay, I'm going to type string. Let's say word equals my first string. Yay. Okay, so when you're making a string, you have to put it in double quotes. Can't put it in single quotes because that's something else. I'll cover that later. You can't put it in single quotes, and you can't put it without any quotes. You can't do like stuff like that. That's gonna be, Java's gonna say no, because it's gonna think that this is other keywords and you're programming with whatever this is. Whenever you put double quotes, Java says, okay, anything within these quotes is just a string, and I can ignore it. It's not programming. It's just a string. It's just a word. So now let's print out this word, or our string variable, and see what it does. Okay, I'm gonna print it out, and it says my first string. Yay! So it did exactly what we wanted to. So now I'm gonna end it there, and in the next tutorial we're going to do some cool stuff with variables. We're going to change variables. We're gonna go over math operators and stuff like that. So stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks.